It is one of the strangest Talmudic episodes. Jerusalem Talmud, Tractate Peah, Chapter 8. Two of the greatest Talmudic sages living in the 3rd century after the Common Era in the Holy Land. They happen to be brothers-in-law, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, the spiritual giants of the generation. Any student of Talmud constantly encounters their conversations, their ideas, their disputations, their perspectives, their insights, their contribution to Jewish law and Jewish thought, invaluable and timeless. Says the Talmud, these two giants go to bathe at the hot springs of Tiberias. Anybody has been at the Chamei Tveria? Have you ever soaked in those special hot springs? Those are unique hot springs. Their heat rises to a terrifying 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's worse than desert springs. 111 degrees at 7 o'clock p.m. When the hot springs of Tiberias cool off, they reach 98 degrees. That's called a cold day. In the hot springs of Tiberias, extremely healing. They lower blood pressure. They increase oxygen in your bloodstream. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish go to bathe in Tiberias hot springs. Who is in front of the entrance? A beggar, a Jewish beggar. He turns to the two great sages and he says one word. You have heard the word, tzedakah, charity. The sages look at him and say, we are going in to bathe. When we come out, we will give you a donation. They go into the hot springs of Tiberias. The Talmud does not tell us how much time they spent there. Was it an hour? Was it 6 hours? Was it maybe a whole day? They come out, and the beggar is dead. He's died from starvation, from dehydration. I interrupt the story and I ask you, honestly, what would be your emotional reaction if it happened to you? You were going into a spa. A homeless beggar, maybe even somebody you knew, asked you, please, ma'am, please, sir, a couple of dollars to spare. Haven't eaten in 2.5 days. You said, no problem, I'll soon give you. I'm going in, I'm coming out. They're dead. What would be your reaction? Let me tell you their reaction. When they saw this dead man, they turned to each other and they said, I quote, we did not merit to be there for him during his lifetime. At least let us merit to be there for him after his death. Somebody has to take care of his body. Somebody has to cleanse his body. Somebody has to prepare his body for burial. Somebody needs to bury him. Somebody needs to buy a plot. Somebody needs to build a tomb on his plot. Let us do it. Let us have the merit to take care of him after his demise. That is what they do. They take the body and they begin the process of preparing it for burial. As you know, Jewish law orchestrates that process in unique detail, out of dignity even for a corpse which is considered sacred and holy. As they are removing his clothes, what do they discover? They discover in his inner bosom a purse filled with golden coins. The man was filthy rich, stingy, and apparently sick. End of the story. What would have been your reaction? I know what would have been mine. I'm a good Jew. What is the definition of a Jew? If you don't feel guilty, you blame yourself. I come out of the spa. I went to Palm Springs on a vacation. I went into the spa. I came out and I found a beggar dead. I indirectly killed a human being. For 10 years, I would be at my therapist twice a week, telling him that I was ruthless, heartless, evil, self-centered, narcissistic, obnoxious, merciless, pitiless, subhuman, horrible. Try to get rid of a little bit of the guilt. I indirectly murdered an innocent, poor beggar. It's not what they did. In fact, when I read the story in Talmud, I felt this sense of cold-bloodedness in their verbiage and communication. Not a word of remorse, not a word of guilt. This is not how Jews talk. They look at each other and they say, oh, we didn't merit to be there for him in his lifetime? At least, let's do the funeral. My late father would always tell me, he grew up in communist Russia. He says, Stalin was an expert in creating funerals. He would kill you, and then he made a grand funeral. And who would suspect that he orchestrated the funeral? By making a good funeral, Reish Lakish, by building a tomb, digging a grave, great. All is forgiven. Is this a scene out of The Godfather? Or is this a scene of our sacred Talmudic text? Friends, 2,000 years before the power of now became an international quip, way of thinking, movement perhaps, the Talmud articulates two of our great spiritual giants, teaching us one of the most vital lessons in life. There is no question that these two sages, had they believed that they killed him, might have spent the rest of their life in repentance, in remorse. No question. However, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish understood that there is a calling right now at this moment. The man died. I can do one of two things. I can wallow in my guilt, drown in my shame, become submerged in the quagmire of what a horrible person I am. Would that help him? A dead human being also needs assistance. He needs burial. He needs closure. He needs a grave. He needs cleansing. Yes, I can focus on my guilt, but will that take me away from my duty, from my calling, from my responsibility right now? Perhaps for the rest of their life they would be busy repenting. But they understood that their previous mistakes and errors cannot paralyze them to the point of stagnation, where they deprive themselves from the calling of the present moment. Right now, this human being who passed away needs you. They tell each other, we did not merit to be there for him in his lifetime. We're going to merit to be there for him after his death. What they understood was that sometimes the devil disguises himself in the face or in the mask of guilt and shame, an endless reflection of telling me what a horrible human being I am and the terrible mistakes I made, and allowing me as a result of that to remain paralyzed and not to rise up to what God and history call me to do at this moment. So Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish said, remorse, we'll talk about that, maybe our whole life. But right now, the human being, history, God, morality, calls upon us to do something. We're going to do it. We're going to be there for him now after his death. Friends, you know what happens when you cultivate that attitude? You know what happened to them? In the process of responding to the call of the moment, you know what they discovered? They discovered that they were not the murderers. They discovered that they did not kill him. The poor man was sick. He had plenty of money to buy himself food. He wished not to for whatever reason. It was not their fault. This is exactly what happens to our lives so often. When we remain etched and stuck in our past, we sometimes live with guilt till the day we die. But when we can open ourselves to the calling of now, paradoxically or interestingly, we often discover and we put our past in context and we realize maybe we were not as guilty as we originally thought ourselves to be. Friends, the Baal Shem Tov says, creation is a perpetual event, meaning God recreates the world every moment, meaning all there really is to reality is now. Because there's a divine energy that flows and vibrates through the cosmos and through the individual psyche right now. And it's a fresh and vibrant and contemporary energy. So if I am living with an hour ago or a minute ago or yesterday or a week, a month, a year, a decade ago, God essentially turns to me and says, hey, wake up, smell the coffee, dance to the beat of now, learn from your past, prepare for your future, but live now. Open yourself up to your calling at this moment. Open yourself up to the energy right now. Open yourself up to the divine flow that vibrates through your soul and heart right now at this moment. So when you go to your room at night and you meet your better half, what do we usually do? We're always bringing up files from the past. Here is what she's going to tell me. Here is how I will respond. Here is what this shmegegi is going to say, my husband. And of course, this is what I will have to say or not say. But what happens if tonight you can date your spouse for the first time? I know you're married for 26 and a half years. But tonight you're going to meet your boyfriend or your girlfriend for the first time. Don't put them in context. Meet your woman, meet your man for the first time. Hey, you're such an interesting person. Don't put them in context. Don't bring up old files. Allow them to be fresh. Give yourself the gift of now. Most encounters that we have when I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to you now, and I'm not listening to you now. I am responding to my impressions of you that are stored in the memory of my brain, and I'm just continuing the conversation. But what if I can rid myself of that toxicity and those thoughts that don't allow me the experience of now? Wow. What if I could look at my children and stop putting them in an old context, see them as new people, fresh people? What if you could meet your mother for the first time? Your father, your brother, your sister, your friends, your employer, your employee, your spouse, your children. It's a different experience. It's a different reality. So Benjamin Zander heads the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. He gave a talk a few years ago, world-renowned conductor and composer. And he says he heard from a woman, an Auschwitz survivor. She is on the transport, on the train to the death camp. She is 15 years old. Her baby brother is 8. Their parents are gone. They've been lost. So she's responsible for the 8-year-old boy, and she looks down and she sees he lost his shoes. And she begins chastising him like an older sister would speak to a baby brother. Oh, you're such a schlemazel. Can't you get anything together? You lost your shoes. Mommy's not here. Tati's not here. Who's going to buy you new shoes? What are you going to do in this new place barefoot? I can't believe how irresponsible you are. Why can't you have your shoes? And she goes on. And she tells Mr. Zander, Why did I regret that conversation? Because it was the last conversation I ever had with my brother. They came to Auschwitz in Mengele's selection. He was sent to the gas chambers. An hour later, his body was reduced to ashes, burnt in the crematorium. She survived. And when she came out of Auschwitz, she decided to step in from death into life. And she made a resolution. And you know what her resolution is? Resolution was this: every conversation that I ever have with anybody, I will make sure that I would not regret it, even if I knew it was the last conversation I ever had with this person. I will never tell a child anything that I would regret, knowing it was the last conversation ever with this child. And I thought to myself, can I give it a little spin and apply it more to contemporary life, which admittingly is not that dramatic? And that is, what is the most important place you have ever visited? What is the most important moment in your life, of the past or the future? Who is the most important person you have ever met or you will meet in your life? Answer: the most important place in your life is the place you are in now. And the most important moment in your life is the moment you are in now. And the most important person in your life is the person you are talking to now. All there is now. Our thoughts hold us captive to the past and to the future, but those are thoughts. Take yourself out of captivity and open yourself up to life. Open yourself up to now. And therefore, what is the most important conversation I will ever have in my life? It's the conversation I am having right now.
Click subscribe to see more exclusive content for the most sought-after Jewish speakers, teachers, and thinkers.